This is video 4 of the video series, and we're going to discuss liquidity. Now, liquidity means three things to me. The first thing it means is, how can I be assured I can get my money back on a regular basis? How regular or how many options are there to a liquidity payout? And then, can I receive my payments on a monthly basis, or can I accrue them? And that's really what we're going to discuss in this video. So let's deal with the first part of the equation, and how liquid is this? Because if you think about it, a student investment or investment in student loans has a relatively long tail. I don't know if you've ever been in the insurance industry, but that's the word tail is used for how long does the payout happen. And in a student type of loan situation, the tail to the investment's around about 5 years. Well, obviously we're offering a lot shorter liquidity than 5 years. The reason we're offering that is because it's really difficult in this market to find people who would actually invest money for over a 5-year span. So we reduced the liquidity to increase that. Now, how does that liquidity work? Your money comes in, we take it, we put it in the student market, and it's basically locked up for over 5 years. Well, not necessarily. Remember, the first part of the equation was we get full recourse back from the schools themselves. Well, obviously students are becoming slow payers every now and again. In fact, every month we get a certain portion of them are slow payers. As I mentioned, or in slide number 3, it's roughly about a 10% or just less than 10% slow pay rate on average. That means that 10% of our entire portfolio comes back to us every month that we then need to redeploy. That's a significant amount of cash every month that comes back into the system. We can use that money, if need be, to pay you out. So that's liquidity option number 1. Liquidity option number 2, of course, is the offset. You invest $100,000, you coming into the program, investor number 2 happens to be redeeming, we offset one against the other, just like a bank. Someone comes into a bank, deposits money, the next person shows up and withdraws, they're basically getting your money back. It's how the bank operates. In fact, the banks operate with a liquid reserve of 10%, some of them even less than that. So if we all showed up tomorrow to Bank of America, for example, and said we all want our money out, they couldn't pay us. Why? Because they're based on many, many years of doing this. They've discovered that 10% is more than they need, because not everyone's going to show up and withdraw their money on the same day. Educate America operates on that type of liquidity basis, but rather than a 10% reserve, we're sitting on a 30% reserve. Now, don't forget that when you invest in Educate America, it's not a daily liquidity option. There is at least a 45-day window for us to get ready for any redemptions. If you wanted to invest your money, which I'm assuming you do because you're watching this video series, and you say, Steve, look, I put it in a 2-year note, I want it out a little bit early, you need to give me 45 days notice. That's not to say I don't have the money sitting ready to go. It just gives me or allows me the opportunity, if I get a significant amount of withdrawals, to stockpile the cash necessary to wire it back to you. I don't ever want there to be an issue with any form of liquidity, or any time that anyone wants to withdraw that I don't have the money. That's not what this program is designed to do. So the next piece of the equation is there's further liquidity from the funds. So we've had the offset between the two different investors. We've also had the redemptions from the schools. The third place is we have 2 funds that are set up specifically with the ability to refund you your money. These funds have, in this instance, at this particular point in time, over a 400% coverage ratio. Now, what does that mean? What that means is the funds themselves, i.e. myself and one of my business partners or associates, have invested enough money to cover your investment by 400%. So for every dollar that's been invested from outside, we have put in $4. Now that ratio is going to change over time as more and more investors come in through the program, but for right now, we have enough liquidity sloshing around to ensure that you get paid out. So now that we've discussed the liquidity side and how you get your money back and why it's liquid and why we can support paying you out when we need to, let's turn to the second piece, which I term laddering. I'm going to turn to the board one more time. Laddering is this. You have in our program, and I'll write it here, laddering, you have you have 4 different investment options. You have 3 months, you have 6 months, you have 1 year, and you have 2 years. You don't necessarily have to put all of your money into any one of these. I have a couple of investors, and more that are adding to this type of idea. I have investors that have divided their investment dollars amongst all of them, or some choose 3 of them. Let's assume you want a 3-month liquidity. Okay? What you would do is you'd obviously invest here, but if you put all of your money into the 3 months, you're going to have a lower rate of return. Now I'm assuming in 3 months, you're probably not going to need all $100,000 in this example back. Maybe you think you might need $25,000. So if you put $25,000 into this piece, then you put $25,000 into the 1 year, $25,000 for 6 months and 1 year, and then $25,000 into the 2 year. When this comes to fruition, and you say, let's assume you don't need the money, you can switch this $25,000 to a 6-month program. What does that do? That means you're going to have something maturing in month 3. You're going to have something maturing in month 6. Assuming you don't need that, by rolling it into the 6-month program, you're going to have something that matures in month 9, and then you're going to have something that matures in year 1, right? So then what you can do is you can start strategizing from there and rolling things into different tranches. So you've got something maturing every 3 months. Now what does that do for you? I'll change to a different color, and hopefully you guys can see this. But right at this point in time, the interest on the 3-month note is 2.25%. On a 6-month note, 2.5%, on the 1-year note it's 3%, and on the 2-year note it's 4%. So by taking a blended rate of return, by doing this, splitting your money out, what you've done is you've essentially increased the rate of return, and it comes out, and this isn't exact, but it averages out to close to a 3% return on your money, rather than putting it all in a 3 month and only earning 2.25%. You've created additional liquidity and you've increased your rate of return. Laddering, it's a way to increase your return without taking away from the liquidity side of things. It's a very important concept. And then the final piece is to decide on these monthly payments whether you want to receive the monthly payment or whether you want to accrue it. Obviously, by accruing the interest on your payments, you're going to increase your overall rate of return. But if you want the liquidity, we mail out checks on the 5th of every month. So that's the final piece to liquidity. Get your checks paid monthly or accrue the interest. It's a liquid investment able to meet your needs.